Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dope Shit Podcast. It's here that you'll find the most civil of conversations.
I won't slap people for being wrong, but you're so wrong if this is something that you think.
The most relevant discussions.
You can't find me unless you're here with me. And that's the kind of rap music that I listen to, and I'm proud of that.
Uncommon Nasa and Samurai Banana bring you the painstakingly curated Dope Shit. You might question what it's about, but there you be a fool. Clues in the title. Nasa, Banana, the dopest of shit. Let's go.
Yo, Dope Shit Podcast, Season 7, at long last, Episode 19.
This season.
This season.
The longest season yet.
Everything that could happen, happened. There's so many things that go into, like, making these episodes. I'm not sure. I don't know how we did what we did for 100+ episodes, pretty much having them on time. I think there was a point where we were doing these weekly.
Yeah.
It just seems insane.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
I think about that sometimes. It's shit.
Yeah, it's just like, wow, man. Like, just it's good to be passionate. So we are still passionate, just within, some normal human reason. But yeah, so here we are kicking off the second to last episode of the last season, but not the last of the show. We're just gonna go into a post-seasonal thing and just start doing episodes when we feel like, which is kind of what we're doing now. Absolutely is what we're doing now. We're just OCD enough where we can't just say, well, season 7 ended at 18 episodes and then we started. No, we have to.
It has to be 20.
Tag on the 19 and 20, even though we're not keeping to any schedule.
Not even a little.
This
bit
is the
at this
psychosis that is Banana and I. And there's no discussion. It was never a discussion to be like, should we
natural.
just? It was obvious that we were going to do 19 and 20, regardless of when they took place. Anyway, so today, I've got something that's been kicking around my head for a couple of months now, and I've actually talked it through with a couple of people, and myself as well. But I want to get on the psychiatrist's couch and say this to Banana and have people hear this conversation, because I think it's important, because I don't think it ever gets talked about. Maybe nobody else thinks about shit like this. But anyway, what I wanted to get into is, I've talked about on the show a little bit, and maybe in other places too, that I have started to experiment with, with writing short fiction, writing like standard poetry again, and doing some painting and collaging and just doing like a lot of non-music art form things. And I've also, as a result, become a fan of those things more. I've finally taken some time to start to learn the artists' names when I go and look at art, or at least see it online at this point, and know like who the, I don't want to say classic painters, but who, the people that you're supposed to know, like, or that, you want to know as a fan, like who they are, what they did, blah, blah, blah. Same thing for writing. And as a result, I've started to notice different things about myself as a creator and a fan and consumer of those things. Is like, music is the only art form where you are a creative artist and you're also a performing artist. And it's not to say that performing artists aren't creative, or that creative artists aren't performing to some degree. But obviously there's a difference between painting in a studio and then showing someone you're painting, and dancing in a ballet, or doing comedy, or, rapping in front of a crowd of people. And just as there's a difference, but the only place where that overlaps, in my mind, maybe you could blow my mind, no pressure, is music. Music, you have your moment where you're doing your writing, you're doing your producing, you're doing your recording, all in private. And then you show that recording and that result to the people that give a shit, and they comment or don't, or listen or enjoy or don't to what you've done, just like a painter or a sculptor or a writer, novelist would do. But there's also another part of music that's totally different, that you take something and it becomes performative. You stand in front of people and you perform the same thing, just like if you were a Broadway actor or a dancer or any other kind of musician. And I find that crazy because like there I'll get into sort of like my feelings on that personally as an artist, for me, but I've never thought about that before. Is that like a new thing for you too, or like, or is this just obvious, like, old man pointing at clouds?
No, I mean, I guess I never really like considered that about like the distinction between like performing, creating in just like all art. When we were talking about it, I also like kind of thinking like the other thing, like writers do kind of perform as well. Like poetry readings happen all the time. People
True.
will read poems or short stories, but it's honestly like not dissimilar from like rap music in general, especially rap music, I think. um there is such an emphasis on writing in rap too.
Yeah.
um like but yeah, I mean, people don't really like, God, I don't know.
I
People.
mean, my thing is like, I gotta say, like, and COVID, the shutdowns and the lack of venues, whether going to see someone perform or performing myself or whatever, um, it kind of made this like accentuated, this thought
Mhm.
pattern for me, because that part of my musicianship was gone.
Mhm.
Not only was it that I was sort of in a phase where I was choosing not to perform as much, but it wasn't up to me anymore, regardless of what I wanted. You know what I mean? So you really had it taken away, and everyone has, worldwide for the most part. And you really start to, because on the creative side of making the music, most of us have not stopped. Most of us have just kept recording and writing and
Right.
collaborating and, putting stuff out, and nothing has. So you start to see
Mhm.
that difference between what you can do and what you can't do, and how different those things are. And those are two totally different tools.
Mhm.
And one of my things is, as I've thought about that, I've thought back to different people in my life and in my past that, in my opinion, really enjoyed the stage part,
Mhm.
like really loved performing. And I don't know how much they were into the the making of the sausage, the cooking of it. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
the sitting down and crafting something.
Yeah.
I've known people, and I'm sure you have too. I've known people that have made an album like every 6 years. And
Mhm.
in between those 6 years have toured that one album and a few random unreleased joints. And that's what they do, because they would much rather be on the road performing than recording new stuff.
Mhm.
And some of that has to do with, I think, maybe, look, it is what it is. Some people are more confident at different things than others. I'm more confident in the studio than I am performing. It's just the way it is. It's just a fact. Um, and I think a lot of that comes from, because I've tried to wrap my head around that, over the years. And a lot of that comes from just the fact that, like, and I don't want this to be misconstrued or for it to come out the wrong way, but I I definitely do not enjoy performing as much as I feel other people do,
Mhm.
and I don't enjoy it nearly as much as creating. And I think there's a scale, of 100 to 0, or maybe, you know, fully left, fully right. Some people are right in the middle, you know, they're 50-50. They go in the studio, banging out, they go on the road, banging out, go in the studio, back and forth, back and forth. Some people are more 70-30, some people are 100-0 to one way or another. You know, some people are beasts, you know, on the road and they just hate going to the studio. And some people are, you know, basically bedroom producers and they stay home. They've never played a show and they only make music at home and they don't want to go out into the world at all. And all of those things, everyone is entitled to. You know, everyone is an original person and everyone is allowed to be themselves and do what they're comfortable doing. I think one of the biggest problems in music is that we have an unfair, and this is across all genres, we have, in my opinion, we have an unfair expectation on musicians to be good at every aspect of making music.
Yeah.
You got to be good at choruses. You got to be good at verses. You got to be good at singing. You got to be good at rapping. You got to be good at dancing. You got to be good at performing. You got to be good at touring. And you got to be good at promoting and making fucking TikToks and all this other shit that people are supposed to do now.
Yeah.
And I honestly think in this day and age, when music is no longer really show business, I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody has to be James Brown.
Yeah.
You know, I think in you know, in basketball, no one's expected to be Michael Jordan. You know, but if you're a performing artist, at least for me, and maybe this is why I don't enjoy performing that much, but at least for me, you're supposed to be fucking James Brown every night. Like that's the way I approach it. Like, you know, and that's a lot of weight to carry, but I think that a lot of musicians and rappers, you know, are trying to go out there and be the best ever, you know, like on a nightly basis. And I don't know how fair that is, or if that's universal, or if that's realistic.
No, it is true. Like the pressure on musicians to perform all the time is kind of exhausting, and it's sort of like you have to then balance your time between the stage and the studio. You know, like nights that you could spend like making music by yourself, you are in a club watching other people performing your set, you know, mingle people, trying to build connections. Like that's a night you could have spent like fucking writing some raps or making some beats. But you can't ignore one or the other. You have to do both.
Yeah, I mean, you do, and I wonder how true that's going to be post COVID, and how true that even is now. I definitely think people still feel that way, and I think there's a good reason to feel that way. I don't see, you know, and a lot of this is overlaid with like where I am in the industry, you know, personally. Like I am not at a point in my life, either experience or talent wise, on stage or off, frankly, that I'm gonna go out and do a bunch of shows for free, or fucking for tips, or fucking beers, or whatever the fuck. Like this is just not gonna ever happen again. No, I don't have any more love to give. I've given all the love I can give. I tell you the honest truth, I would not perform a block away from here for free. Period. Like, you know, I mean, I've never gotten paid to do a show in New York City. I got paid, the only time I got paid to do a show in New York City, somebody from outside of New York City booked me to open for them. That's the only time I got paid anything more than like $20 or $40. So for anyone that thinks that I'm rich, think again. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of like also part of like the weight that you carry when you get to be like a bitter, older veteran person, is you start to like evaluate like, well, shit, like I can sit home and make the music that I really need to get out of me, that is important to me, make it look great, you know, design a product, or you know, help design a product with input like to a designer, and as a label put out something that is worth people's money. And that to me is very satisfying. Um, it's also satisfying, don't get me wrong, like I've done shows, where I've had a handful of people or several people or whatever come up to me and say like, wow, I've been waiting for you to come for a while. Like I never thought that you would come here, and they love the music and they know the words, and how much better a feeling is that, and I've also done the show where nobody knows who I am, and I watch people get converted, and for me, because of the kind of music that I do, the conversion doesn't usually, although sometimes it has, it doesn't usually take place in like, oh wow, people have started dancing. It's happened. I mean, there's nothing more surreal than like performing a song like Pipe Dreams and just watch people just start pop locking, like, and you're just like, oh wow, like, okay, cool. My music can do this. Didn't expect that. But usually for me, it is one of my favorite things about being on stage for me, because of what I do, like, is watching the eyes start to understand what you're doing, and like, because all of my stuff for the most part is visual and it's thinky. I don't have any like throwaway stuff. I don't have any fucking haha metaphors. Like I'm all about like thinkiness. And when you watch somebody do that live, in front of you, that's really exhilarating.
Mm-hmm.
But I also listen to my friend's podcast, the Toth Zone, with Wooden Wan, who's my oldest friend, and not because he's old, but because I've known him the longest. And oh man, that's funny. I've known him long enough that he'll find that funny too. But yeah, so he talked about touring on a recent episode, and he has probably played way more than me, and has certainly played more places than me. He played like all across Europe, and I got to the UK, but I didn't get to other places, and I haven't been to Canada before playing or anything like that. I've played almost everywhere in the United States, mainland United States. But that being said, he's played more than what I've done, and I've done a decent amount. And he still was like, you know what? I've heard a lot of people say that they are like exhilarated on stage and it's euphoric. And he was like, I don't know exactly what he said. I'm putting words in his mouth, but he basically said like, I don't usually feel that. And what's more addicted to me on the road is like meeting different people and being in different places and having those experiences. And when he said that, I was like, wow, that's like what's been in my head this whole time. And I haven't been able to formulate that, about how I feel about playing. You've been on the road. I mean, your role on stage is a little bit different because you're DJing and you're plotting the set and trying to evoke emotions out of a crowd, and anyone that's seen Banana play has seen how excitable this man is.
See, I love playing live.
That's what I thought you would say.
Yeah. It's so much fun. I just get to, while out and fucking be the craziest version of myself that there is. Just like let out energy. It's cathartic being on stage, I think. But I mean, like, it definitely isn't for everyone. It isn't for anyone. No, it's not for everyone. It's like some people like it's too like intimidating. Some people it's just boring, for them.
I get bored up there a lot of times. And it's interesting, man. I have not felt that, and a lot of this is because of the music I make as well. But I've never felt that like cathartic, like, release like that. I mean, I've come close to feeling it, but I haven't like gotten off a stage like feeling like a fucking superstar. And part of that is because there's a lot of reasons for that. If I'm gonna analyze myself, which is apparently what I'm doing, but like,
You're on the couch, man.
I'm on the couch. Like, a lot of the reasons for that is because a lot of times I'm playing for people that don't know who the fuck I am and are hearing my music for the first fucking time, and there may or may not be a lot of them. So that's the first reason why I may not feel that exhilarated when I get off the stage. Second reason is because my music isn't for everybody, and it's also not like built to fucking, move the crowd and all that shit. I mean, I've got some songs that, are more energetic than others. I've got 574s and Pipe Dreams and songs like that. But Desperate Times was one of those, like even War on Bicycles. Like, I used to get movement out of that, but I've also got a lot of like kind of solemn, thinky songs, and I've done more of that over the years lately. So that's the other reason. And the third reason is I am way too in tune with my own brain, as you know, from traveling with me and knowing me as a friend. Like, nothing gets past me, like it's very rare that somebody will be like, you've been doing this for a while, and I hate to say it, but like, people aren't comfortable with that. Like, it just doesn't happen to me, whether it's negative or positive or anything. Like, I usually have a pretty good grip on what's going on. Like, I would often fall into the trap. I started to cut this out as I got more experience, but I would often fall into the trap of like literally analyzing my own set as I'm still doing it. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd be up there and I'd be like, that didn't come off as good as last night.
Damn.
Or, that was good. I was gonna keep this going. This is much better than the night before. Like, I'm like doing play-by-play for my own shit, and like, I think a lot of that is because it's not, we're all artists. All of us are artists, and some of us are lucky enough to know exactly what we were put here to do. And some of us, I feel like I've become one of these people, or maybe I was the whole time. I feel in my heart that like I can do multiple disciplines of art. Mm-hmm. I might not be that fucking great at all of them, or like, whatever, but like, I can do it for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can please myself as mentally, on a few different disciplines. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I've thought to myself, like, wow, what if music wasn't the right one? What if the reason I feel like this is because I really was supposed to be a novelist, but I didn't do it from you know what I mean? Now I'm playing catch up. Or maybe I was supposed to be some kind of like artist, like a visual artist of some sort, and I didn't realize it until much later, or I didn't develop those skills until later. Like, it's I'm not like this person that is like, obviously I love music and I have passion for it, and I've done it for over 20 years. And I know that it's my bread and butter, artistically. And without it, I wouldn't be able to even think about doing other disciplines of art. But I also, sometimes I really, when it's just me and my thoughts, it's like, wow, like, you get that imposter syndrome, you know what I mean? Like, where you're like, maybe I was meant to be like in a studio painting alone, not talking to other people. Maybe my problem is that music is way too social of an art form. Yeah. And even though I am comfortable like having these conversations in public and putting them on YouTube and shit, like, I'm a bit of an extrovert, but I'm also an introvert at the same time, if that makes sense. And I think most artists are like that. I think most artists want to think that they're the extrovert because that makes them sort of like alpha, like in the situation. Mm-hmm. But I don't think any artist is truly an extrovert, because I don't think you get there by being an extrovert, because extroverts are extroverted by not thinking about much of what they do and say. Whereas as an artist, no matter what kind of art you're doing, whether it's pop or metal or hip hop or painting or sculpting or dancing, you're thinking a lot about what you're doing before you do it and as you do it. So that kind of makes you a natural introvert.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do kind of want to say I want to make a point real quick that I think that performing songs can be really beneficial. Like performing new can be really beneficial for the recording process.
Yes.
I think that one really great thing about performing is you can share like works in progress. You can share songs before you've recorded them and like play them for people and get people hype about it. And in doing that, you can learn about what works. You can sort of like hash this out, be like, okay, when I do this, like the audience thinks this. And so maybe I should alter it so that it can be a little bit better. This is especially true for like delivery. Like I've heard people's delivery on verses get exponentially better after performing them live, just because they need to know, like, yes, like it to see how people react to it before it's in their hands.
I agree. I have a personal disagreement, but I agree in general. I can only speak from my process. Like I 99% of the time don't perform songs that aren't out already. And I've never performed a song that isn't actually recorded already. I've recorded stuff that I used to, I played Ornate for years and it wasn't available anywhere. The title track, and now it's out officially. And I had other songs like that too, but I never performed something that wasn't already recorded because I come from that background. You know, I come from that recording background where I'm comfortable in the studio and I don't have what impacts what I do in the studio is going out and doing songs and seeing what songs work and what songs don't. And then that guides me and has guided me over the time when I was touring heavily, like to what I'm going to come back and do next. You know, so like when I toured in 2013 and 2012, you know, without that experience, I probably wouldn't have made 574s the way I made it. You know, but when I made 574s, I had the live show in mind. You know, like I knew when I made that chorus the way it was, and when I did the delivery the way it was, and when I chose that beat from Messiah Music, I knew what that was going to feel like live, and that influenced the way that I wrote the song without me even consciously really knowing it. And that is super important about making music because, like, you know, when I was performing my early work, you know, even pre-Landed the Way It Is stuff, I learned real quick that like that shit doesn't work live. You know, like I put out an EP like when I was still semi in the presence that is I'm not even going to give credit to now because it's kind of like if you know what I'm talking about, that's great. Cool. But I don't really address the EP anymore because it's just not really representative of what I do. But I learned quick that that kind of music is not going to work on the road unless I want to be a pariah. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I met people that they're comfortable being pariahs, and that more power to them. I wasn't gonna try to do that, you know. And that changed the way that I wrote music and the way that I made music. And by the time I came back to Landed the Way It Is, my sound had changed significantly. And then when I got to New York Telephone, I had kind of moved that forward, and then so on and so forth. But you know, I mean, really, like the bulk of my touring, I did 4 tours behind Halfway, and Halfway, you know, wasn't as well known. Halfway did well, but it wasn't like New York Telephone. It wasn't like Written at Night. But ironically, like Halfway had the best songs to perform live on it. And that was sort of like the apex of my touring experience, was doing most of the songs from Halfway were primarily my set. And so, you know, I that's how I feel about it. I'm not like, I am a firm believer that recording and live are 2 different things vocally. Unless you're doing like punk rock or something, you know what I mean? Like then it's different. But like, you know, when you're doing rap, in my opinion, and this is just me subjectively speaking, like, you know, the goal of recording is to get the right take. No matter how many times it takes, even if you're punching, it doesn't make any difference. we're here to make magic. We're not here to
Mm-hmm.
fucking pay dues. You know what I mean? Like this is the magic place, you know? So you do what you do to get the shit to sound like magic. And like, you know, it's not to say that, you know, there aren't weak examples of overusing punch-ins in the world. And there aren't examples of people that literally are doing things that you cannot do live, like from a breath control standpoint. But in general, like I feel like your job in the recording studio, whether you're punching or not, is to get the words clear and concise, confident, with the correct tone, so that they can be listened to repeatedly, because that's what a recording is. A live performance is different. You know, you may change the way you say something. You may not have to be super clear. It's more about the intention. It's more about your vibe. It's more about your energy, because no one's ever going to see that again. That performance is unique. It's there. It either goes well or it doesn't go well. You know what I mean? Like there's just a distinct difference from that, you know? So, but I know what you're saying.
There's definitely a huge difference between performance and recording. I mean, I guess this is like a little off, but like think about like the artists who are better live than they are on record.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it kind of baffles me a little when I sort of experience that. And like usually I feel like it has to do with like energy. But it's like, yeah, it's a real weird one.
I think most things in music and in art come down to will and effort. And again, this ties in perfectly with what I said, and what we're talking about is like there are people that really love being on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really love being in a studio. They don't like writing.
Mm-hmm.
I've met people that hate writing so much that they would rather go into the booth and freestyle 4 tracks and put the track together in editing rather than write the shit. I've done that multiple times with multiple artists. Like, and that's fine. Like some of that shit works and some of it doesn't. But to me, it obviously you're you know, all of us that are artists and creatives, the thing that makes us different in a lot of ways than the average motherfucker is we are very interested in what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that we don't want to do, we don't give a fuck about. And this is why most of us are shitty at our jobs, especially when we're younger. And you know, why like there are people that are disappointed in us sometimes, because there are efforts that we don't want to give for certain things because they ain't what the fuck we want to do. And that's the kind of brain you have when you're an artist, no matter what discipline you're in, no matter what genre you're in. And that goes into the art creation too. You know, if you happen to be a person that is prone to just the adrenaline and the energy of being on stage, and listen, people have tried. You cannot do that in a studio. You don't do it. Like, unless you have a fucking pile of amplifiers behind you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't really replicate that. That's rock and roll. That's why rock was so successful for so long. Is because rock music was the closest that captured the energy of a live show on a recording.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're talking about amplified music, you know? But you really can't capture that in hip hop for the most part. People have tried. I guess there are people that think there are successful people that do it. It's not for me. You know what I'm saying? Like for me, a recording is a recording, and I want to hear that shit crispy. You know, and I think most people do. And there are some people that can't handle that. Some people are not comfortable in the studio. Some people are very at home in front of 30 to 300 people and are very uncomfortable in front of one person. This is just a fact of life, you know? And I think those are the things that are playing into what you're talking about. And, you know, conversely, I've seen people that are the greatest, you know, musicians, rappers, whatever, you know, like people that make music that inspires me to no end, that when I see them perform are fairly mediocre, you know? And I hate being a judge of somebody's live performance because I feel like that's a personal thing. You know what I mean? Like, but everybody has seen those artists, you know, so it does work both ways, you know, and I think at best you hope that you can really make some great content and be able to perform it fairly well and authentically on stage. Anything more than that to me is you're trying to be James Brown. It's never gonna work. Like, you know, like just get to a point where everyone's comfortable with it, you know? It's the 20th episode of the 7th season.
God.
It's
many.
The last of the seasonal era.
This is the 140th episode.
Jesus Christ, don't say that. That's just like, holy shit.
We've done 140 of these.
You would think that either we were being forced to do this or we were getting paid to do this.
Nope.
But no, 140 episodes. So if you are doing a podcast and you've reached episode 45, fuck you. You haven't accomplished anything.
Who are you?
Moving on. Dope Shit Podcast, Season 7, Episode 20.
Yeah.
AKA 140.
Right.
After this, I guess we'll probably call them like Episode 141 or something. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I know that I know that I'm kind of... The seasonal thing just freaks me out now.
Too much pressure.
You could see the level of like weird that I am in real life, that like just I wake up one day and I'm just like, you know what, this whole thing with the seasons, nah, it's not gonna happen. So last week I talked to Banana a lot about really like you know, the whole theme of the episode was comparing creating to performing, and really the theme of the episode probably translated as like NASA doesn't want to perform anymore. Or at least that I'm not as excited about performing, which is partly true. I stand by what I said last week. I said what I said. Meant what I fucking said. But as I edited it and as I listened to it back, I felt like there was more to say to contextualize it. So if you're watching the video version of this podcast, you're watching basically the 2 episodes scrunched together, because that's what I'm going to do. You know, that way it's all in one piece. You can hear like me say one thing and then hear me say another thing, which, as Banana knows, knowing me off podcast, is sort of like the balance of having a conversation with me, right? Like,
not irregular.
Exactly. Like, you know, I would talk about something to a point that I run all the way to the left, and then I am forced to run to the right. That's the way that these things work. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Did you listen back at all? Or okay.
I don't listen to podcasts.
This is true. We had that podcast once too, where we talked about that. We're like the Simpsons. We everything has been done. So, yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I would add to last week's episode, and I should say this, like, I know that, you know, this is a lot of me talking about me to some degree, which is sort of the way I roll, but also sort of not the point. Like, I have like this platform with Banana, I have other platforms too. I make music. I try to do things that represent me, but that also, like, you know, the listener like can hear somebody else talk about something that maybe they haven't been able to talk about, or that nobody else is talking about, and can understand. You know what I mean? Like, you try to make that connection here. So I don't want this to come off like overly, like, you know, ridiculous, but I would follow up with a couple of points of context. Like, you know, first of all, I do like being on stage. I don't feel electrified all the time. but I definitely have had some really fun shows and do enjoy the craft of rehearsing and getting songs down and seeing how they go and moving sets around and seeing how certain songs play in certain areas and all that kind of shit. That being said, a lot of the color of, you know, the idea of what I said in the last episode in terms of like not feeling that same vigor for performing as I do for like creating, for instance, is I fall I fall short of the willpower for things that involve other people to happen a lot quicker. So like what I mean by that is unless I have like willing participants in something, I usually will bail out of like group or oriented things. Like it just, I'm not here to carry, you know, things. And like if you see me in a group like White Horse or Guillotine Crowns or even running a label like Uncommon Records, just because I have people next to me that are like, boom. So, and you could talk to this a little bit too, like you have to depend on people to book your shows and book you a lot
Yeah.
when you're touring. And I don't know, like, you know, how Karma stuff got booked. I know the Head Trip carried a lot of that, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you at least saw it, and even with me, you know, like I've booked tours that you've been on, and you know, looped you in on emails and correspondence and stuff, and you know, you could see like what it is. It's a pain in the ass. Um,
Yeah.
it's not spoken about how much of a pain in the ass that is. You know, have you ever been like, have you ever been in a situation where you've been like burned by a booker?
I mean, I have like never really dealt with any of that shit. I have tried to keep uh myself out of that business shit as much as possible.
It's a smart man. It's a very smart man.
I mean, the thing is, like, you know, I'm just the DJ, so you know,
Yeah.
what do I know? Uh, you know, and I've always just like I've never been like the main guy, you know, as the DJ.
Mm-hmm.
So usually it falls to whoever I'm DJing for, which is, you know, basically mostly Karma Kids, um, to like deal with shit, you know, like I wasn't when we toured together, I wasn't handling any of that
Yeah.
because I hate it. I hate it so much. I don't think I could. Like up if it was up to me to like book shows, I'd never play. Like
I mean, I think that's true of most people. I think that's why a lot of artists, including artists that we play, you never see them playing shows or touring. Not never for all of them. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah.
like,
Rough.
it's really hard. It's hard for a couple reasons because first of all, like I attribute most of my touring success to my love of geography. And like my map skills teachers that put maps in front of me in second and third grade and gave me that fascination with like looking at routes and maps and states and naming the states just by the shapes and like all that kind of bullshit. You have to really be into that. I think that's a low key skill for booking. Like if you're not interested in that before, you know, everybody's interested in traveling. At least if you're talking about touring, it's because you want to travel. If you, I don't know any other reason to tour unless you just are a complete egomaniac. You know, like you love traveling. You know, that's one of the main things that gets you on the road is like, wow, I will never have this opportunity to go to Memphis, Tennessee again unless I'm there rapping. So I better go. But there's a lot that goes into that, you know, and it's not just, see, a lot of people will immediately recognize the problem of booking is that you have to put yourself in a line and reach out to people and hope that they want to book you. That's one hard part. Then you have to negotiate what you're getting paid and what the situation is. Then the third hard part is when and if they say no, do you have a second person you can go to in that city or another city nearby that you can then replace that city with? All of this is happening while you have to put those cities in a logical order.
Yeah.
A lot of people that start out, for whatever reason, I was lucky enough to just know this instinctually. As far as I can remember, nobody told me to do this. I just knew it because it's kind of common sense. Let's be real. But a lot of people go against common sense in the music industry. But normally, you want to do what's called a circular route. So me, you, and Carl did one of the most extensive tours that I did. Because I haven't done fucking, month-long tours or anything like that. I've done mostly 10 to 14-day tours. And one of the most extensive tours that we did was we started in New York and we got in the car and we drove a full loop that took us as far as St. Louis and then looped us back through the Rust Belt and into the Northeast and all that. And I was able to do that. Carl probably booked a few of those dates, but most of the tours that I've done, I've booked at least 60% of the dates. I would say almost all of them. At least 50% of the dates. Probably more like 60 or 70. Some of them like 80 or 90. Not pointing any fingers. I did, we did like a long loop. And that was just instinctual, like to do that. But I've seen tours where you're just like, wait a minute. These dudes are doing Fort Worth, and then they're doing Sacramento, and then they're doing Phoenix in 4 days? Like, how does that work, B? So, that's part of the difficulty. And the reason that happens to people is not because they can't look at a map or because they're stupid. I mean, maybe for a small percentage. But, it's because when the guy in Houston says no and you can't go south anymore, people freak out and they have to do a date the next day after playing Fort Worth, and they just take whatever the fuck, and if it's Sacramento, it's Sacramento, and they drive 2 days and then they drive back to meet that Phoenix date that was supposed to connect, blah 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 blah. So it's that part of it I don't miss. I used to tell people all the time, and I still do, and remember, I did this 13 times, at least that I can remember. One of them was in the UK where me and Duke kind of co-booked it, but I booked half of that tour in the UK without ever having been in the country before. And I did it the same way. I just approached people and did it. And it also puts you in an awkward spot where you're approaching these people. You're saying hey, I've got an open Wednesday in Nashville or in Trenton or in Cincinnati. And you're asking people for that date. And then you have to ask them for money because you can't come for free. So you're it's weird. It's normal because that's just the nature of the beast. But I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't think there's anyone that feels comfortable doing that. It's a must. It's a necessity. It's part of the dirty part of the job is that you have to call people up, or not call people up, but contact people in the internet and be like, yo, this is where I'm going to be, and this is what I want to do, and this is the money that I would like to have from you. And then you have to negotiate from there in this negotiation that this person, generally speaking, didn't ask for. And a lot of times it works out. People are like, oh shit, word, because obviously I'm contacting people that book regularly, and people that book regularly have generally heard of me, or at least when I write them can click on my music, see that I'm dope, see that I've done other tours, and know that I'm going to show up and be a professional. So it's not like a hard so it's not like I'm grabbing people off the street, but all of that is hard, man. And then you do all that just to fucking, to go there and bust your ass, and then, sometimes after the show you have to sleep in somebody's shitty crib, you know? I've heard people complain about hotel rooms, and I'm just like, I'll take the shittiest hotel room over like a shitty apartment. What's your stance on that kind of shit, man? Like, cause you've slept in some shitty places with me and without me, I'm sure.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, I've been to some nice spots. It's probably the hardest part about touring
Mm-hmm.
is like the fucking like where are you resting your head kind of thing, because like that's part of what you have to book. You have to book like somebody who has a couch for you and your friends, like, and if you can't find that, you're eating a lot of what you made like in a hotel. It's oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, hotels come with a cost. I mean, usually when I'm looking for them, they come pretty cheap because I'm a frugal motherfucker. I mean, we have slept in cars. Let's just be realistic here. Me and you have slept in cars. I've slept in. It was not the time when I slept in a car with you and Carl. I believe that was once. It probably was more than once, but it was not the only time I've done that. I've toured with people that refuse to do that. Pussies. But again, like this is part of the game. So like I think that I wanted to personally, after hearing the last episode, I felt like musicians would understand what I was saying, but maybe people that only toured once, or maybe people that have not ever toured or don't make music, maybe would be like, ah, that's cool, but he sounds like a little bitch. Like I feel like, you know, there has to be some context to, like, you know, you don't get to what I said last week without, you know what I mean, without struggle and triumph. You know what I'm saying? So like for me, you know, a lot of times, man, I was more comfortable sleeping in a car than some people's cribs, man. Man, like if listen, if you're putting up musicians, please clean your house. If you can't clean your house, please clean your bathroom. Please clean your shower. I remember I stayed at some fool's house. I don't know who this guy was. I remember where it was, but I obviously I can't say. It was not my booking. The show was fine, but it wasn't my booking, so I didn't know the guy to put us up. Blah blah blah. I'll tell you later. I get up in the morning to take a shower. This dude and his homies had left the crib. I was probably alone, or I was like either there with like maybe you sleeping. It was a tour that we were on together. And I went in the bathroom to take a shower, and the bathroom. You ever see like when somebody comes inside from the rain in like work boots, and they on tile, and they leave footsteps of like dirt and black muck on the floor, like in footstep form? Ugh. The entire bathroom was this. And I'm walking through, and you know, I'm tired, man. Like I had just performed the night before. I woke up in the morning to take this shower. On my way in, I got my shoes on. You know, I'm not trying to get buck naked outside of somebody's bathroom. So like I have all my clothes on, obviously. So I walk in with my shoes on, and I kind of was like, this floor is dirty, but you know, it didn't click because it's early and I'm on tour and I'm already filthy. So I get out of the shower, right? And now I'm fucking obviously naked because that's usually what people do when they're showering. So I'm trying to find a place to put my bare foot on the ground. And there are so many dirt footsteps on the ground, like in that you know, it's like what's that game? Twister. You're trying to like play Twister with your feet to like position to get back out to where the towels are. And I eventually did it, and I probably didn't clean up the floor. First of all, it's not my floor, so fuck you. Anyone that's thinking I could have cleaned the floor before I got in the shower. But second of all, like, there's probably only one towel in this motherfucker. So it's like, what am I cleaning it with? My t-shirt? You know what I mean? Like, so I fucking got through it. But like shit like that, man, it's so avoidable. So like if you're putting people up, that's awesome. But like don't think that you're like the shit just because you put somebody up. Because if you put somebody up poorly, you might as well let the motherfucker sleep in their car.
Mhm.
Like, you know, and so that's the kind of shit that like, you know, I'm a pretty rough and tumble person. I could deal with a lot. Um, I've been on tours with people that equally, um, sometimes the same people, like equally will be ready to not eat for 3 days in a row, which to me is just like, why would I go on tour if I couldn't eat? Um,
Yeah. How do you perform shows like
Youth and drugs is all I could think of. Like I you know, everybody that's toured has known the person that's like, nah, yo, I'm good. I'm gonna save my money. I don't need pizza. And you're just like, I'm not gonna buy you a piece of pizza, bro.
that?
Like, I will eat this shit in front of you. Like, we are in this together in more ways than one. Like, you know, you need to buy. I mean, it's not like I'm not gonna share something with somebody, but like, you know, if you can't afford a slice of pizza, like, there are better things to be doing than touring with people who can afford a slice of pizza. But that being said, yeah, I mean, people are willing to rough it out in that way. I'm usually not. I get very cranky when I haven't eaten.
Yeah.
You are witness to such things. Do you remember like St. Louis?
Yeah.
He's like, no hesitation. He was like, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. St. Louis was a time.
So we drive into St. Louis in the morning, and I need food really badly. St. Louis was that when we escaped Nashville in the middle of the night? I think
It
we did.
sounds right.
I think we
We got there
escaped.
mad early.
Yeah, we left Nashville early because again, the living arrangements were like we showed up and there were
There were
just
some people.
insane people living in this apartment.
There were roommates of people who lacked some boundaries. Let's say that.
Lacked a lot of boundary in multiple ways. Like just
Multiple
like or it
ways.
was just like yeah, like and remember like I know that we've toured more than once together just as Uncommon NASA as an outfit. I think we toured twice. Like I think you toured twice in support of me directly, and then there was a third tour that I was, or two more tours that I was on with Karma, and all of us were together.
Yes.
So we've been on the road at least 4 times,
Jeez.
right? Because we did Vinyl Cape, we did the Carl tour, and then we did the 2 Karma tours. It might have even been more. It might as well have been more. But so we're in Nashville, and we basically, you know, my one rule, I have basically 2 rules on the road. I don't try to like dictate anything. I try to be mature on the road, but I also understand boundaries of myself to like tell people what the fuck to do and all that because it's not really my job. I'm not somebody's fucking dad. But the 2 rules that I had is A, like, don't hold shit without telling me in a fucking car. Like, period. And generally speaking, don't hold shit at all. Like, make sure that shit gets devoured in some way in between the car trips. Second of all, and most importantly, if any one person on the tour feels uncomfortable in their surroundings where we're staying, everyone agrees to leave. And to me, that was like the most valuable rule that I kept.
Yeah.
And when we woke up in Nashville, things were taking place. We told that story a long, long time ago, and maybe it'll come up again someday, but I won't bog it down with that part of the story. But I was like, yo, I literally was waking you and Carl up. I was like, yo, we gotta go. That's it. I'm calling the rule. I'm calling the rule. We're going. I'll drive. I'm good.
There was no disagreement.
Yeah, it was.
We all felt that way.
It was like, yo, we're either gonna end up fighting or we're gonna be driving. And so we left. So we drive out of Nashville. We drive into St. Louis. By the time I get there, you know, when you start driving at 5:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and you get to a town like St. Louis that you've never been to at 11 o'clock, it is extremely disappointing. Sorry, St. Louis. I actually went back to St. Louis, had a great show. Shout out to 18 and Counting. It was the best show on the worst tour I've ever done. That's an esteemed position for St. Louis, which is a lot different than the St. Louis that me, you, and Carl found. So anyway, we drive in, and I'm fucking starving, and I am cranky as fuck. I'm like fucking fire-breathing dragon. And I have only snapped harder on a tour once. Sorry, Gotcha. For no reason, just because I'm hungry and it's early. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I've almost come to blows on tours, but that was over real shit. You know what I mean? Like actual things. Mm-hmm. This was for no reason. This was just because I was hungry and tired and cranky. And so I'm driving into St. Louis and I need to find food. But first, I had it in my head that I needed to get to a bank. Because you remember what I used to do when we were touring, and I did this to the end, and I just heard, again, this is on my mind, but like, shout out to the Tote Zone. I heard his tip was to take, when you get the knot of the money, first of all, if you're on tour for more than 5 days and you don't have an embarrassing knot of cash, you're doing it wrong. Now, having an embarrassing knot of cash does not mean that you have made a lot of money or that you're doing it, because you got to pay for your rental car and flights and all that other stuff. So all that knot in your wallet is probably just breaking even money, but you better have a fucking knot in your pocket. If your pocket is empty and you're paying for a car and you're paying for a flight, you're fucking up, unless you're like 12. So we get into St. Louis, got the fucking fat wallet, and so my shit that I used to do is sounds so stupid after hearing what my friend does. Because what my friend does is reasonable. He will go to a bank or a check cashing place. He will put the cash on the table, or at least enough cash as he wants, out of what he's not going to keep. Put it in a money order, mail that money order back home. It's fucking genius, right? Like, I didn't even think to do that at all. Crazy. Because it's so easy. What did I do? I took, when I got to about 800 or 1,000 in my pocket, because remember, most of your money on tour is going to be 20s, not hundreds. Maybe even less than 20s. So at that point, as the money man, because I would always keep the money, I still got to eat and get a fucking candy bar or whatever, and I'm going into fucking rest stop places with fucking fat wads of cash is bad. So I would go to banks and I would put like $1,000 in small bills on the table and be like, hey, can you give me hundreds for this? And that was my way of minimizing my wallet. And it worked, because if you're careful, people can't tell that you have hundreds. They can tell you got bills, but they can't tell you have hundreds. I mean, I'm lucky I didn't get robbed and killed, but it is what it is. So we finally find a bank, the Fifth Third Bank, and I could tell this story a lot longer, but long story short, it was in a pretty bad neighborhood, and this dude saw me leave the bank and was yelling at me to come here, and he was just like, come here, man, come here. And I was like, no. I just start walking, it was like a fucking cartoon, and I could hear him behind me, and he's like, come on, man, get over here, man, get over here. And I'm like, no. And I just like keep walking, and I get in the car and I could see him, and he's like straight, like pimped out. He's got like an expensive suit and like a cane and a hat. And I don't know what he was trying to check me for. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be on that block at that time or whatever, but I was getting the fuck out of there. And I learned a valuable lesson to not go into banks in the middle of the hood looking for $1,000 worth of change. Because first of all, the people in the bank thought I was a fucking complete, like, they thought I was like White Boy Rick or some shit. And so like we leave there, and I had fucking exploded on the way there. And I remember saying like something, I was going on, and I was just like, you motherfucker. I was like straight like James Brown, like asshole at that point. I was like, you motherfuckers can't even open up an app and find me a fucking bank. I was fucking going crazy. I lost my shit. And man, it was so stupid. But I think you guys took me so not seriously that it didn't bother you.
Yeah, we're just like, okay, NASA.
Yeah, it was so like,
Okay.
I've learned that I take those sort. Well, I don't know, man. I think that if the shoe was on the other foot, I probably wouldn't have taken that seriously either. I might have reacted in the moment, but I would have ultimately not given a shit. But you guys didn't react. It was like, see, what you guys don't understand or didn't understand, being the passive, reasonable humans that both of you are, is that silence makes me so much more angry. So anyway, the those are the kinds of things that happen on tour that honestly, that was fun, and I had fun on that tour, and I was
a great tour.
Young enough in the game that like being cranky about being hungry wasn't a big deal whatsoever, because and St. Louis was a complete disaster. It was the least, it holds the record still. That trip to St. Louis holds the record for the least attendees in the largest venue I've ever played.
Oh yeah,
I've played large venues with people. I've played small venues with no people, but I've never played a large venue like that with that few people.
It was ridiculous. It was comical.
It was comical. It was nuts. And at that point, it was just a celebrated rehearsal. We had Chicago the next day. And if I remember right, Chicago show went really well.
Chicago's great.
Chicago's always great.
Yeah.
Shout out to Colossal Structure. Big up to Rob, who I think booked me every time I've played Chicago. And I've played Chicago a lot. So shout out to Colossal Structure, man. Always put on a good show too. Whether he was booking me for a show at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or a show at 10 o'clock at night, it was always fun, and it was always worth doing. So but that's part of it, man. It's up and down, and like I just, at a certain point for me, and I'm gonna ask you this directly. I'm gonna put you on the spot. Put you hardcore on the spot. Forget about me talking for a minute. You get the ups and downs, and it's like anything else. You get that up and down. In general, you're kind of on an upswing. You're going up and down, but you're going up. But you get to a certain point where you either for me, like I guess I think I need more of a break than a stop. I'm still kind of on that break. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a bit, but like, where are you with touring and playing? Like, do you hunger for it? I didn't ask you this in the last episode, which I should have.
I mean, I really want to play shows again. I
mean, not in New York. Yes. But everywhere else, and everything that comes with that. I mean, that's what I'm asking you.
It's kind of like double-edged. Like, in some ways I really miss touring, and other ways I don't. Like, because it is so uncomfortable in so many ways. But at the same time, it's really fun. Like, I really enjoyed being able to just sort of like roam around and see a bunch of different places. But at the same time, like, I talk about like places I've been, and it's just like I haven't really been there because I've been there for tours. because generally speaking, like with the exception of when you have to, leave really early in the morning from one spot because the people you're staying with are fucking psychos, generally you're not getting to your new city like until like an hour or two before the show starts. Like you have time to like
not on my tours, but yes, that is true for most people.
It's been nice.
I will say that I am not a show up in time for the show person, which is why I usually drive to every show, because then I have a level of control, which is scary that I need it, but I do. I am very uncomfortable driving on somebody else's schedule or on somebody else's route. It's a trigger for me. It's really bad. Like if you put me in a car with friends and don't tell me where we're going, it's like a mental break. Like you've probably seen it before because I'm sure it's happened on tours. I freak out, and it's not something I can control or something I'm thinking about like otherwise. It just, once I'm in that moment, it's not good for me. So I always try to get, if I can. I mean, sometimes you book shit and it's 9-10 hours away and shit happens. But if I can, I try to get there early. But most normal people at tour, I will hand back to you 1 to 2 hours before the show. Yes.
But also, but like, even then it's like, okay, you still don't get a full day in a place.
No, I totally agree. As much as I get to places early, there's only so much you can do before a show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tour just sort of ends up being a blur of people's and weird shit that happens along the way. More than like I've never really been able to like a tourist on tour. If that makes any sense. I'm not trying to like walk around with like a camera in my hand and point at shit and go, ooh, but like it's it's kind of rare that like I get time to like go wander around and like hit a record store or like.
Yeah. We did that in St. Louis. We went to a record store.
That was
Ironically,
actually
it was that place.
The best part of St. Louis was that record store.
And that restaurant was fucking banging.
That restaurant was pretty dope.
It was called like the Naked Chicken or something. It was like a ridiculous name like that.
Yeah.
But Sketch and I have been lucky. As I hear you saying that, I'm thinking of the times where I was able to be a tourist, and there were 3 instances where me and Sketch were able to do that on 2 different tours in 3 different cities. We were very lucky. With Gaja a little bit, but not as much. But with you and I can't think of a time where we did something that wasn't driving to a show or doing a show, unfortunately. That sucks. But because it doesn't happen often, 9 cities out of 10, you come in, you see the show, and you see somebody's fucking apartment, which sucks. But yeah, with you and I in particular, man, I really can't. It sucks, man. Because I mean, we've probably played on tour alone. We've probably played at least 30 shows, if not 35 or 40.
Yeah.
Maybe closer to 35 or 40.
Yeah.
Which means 35 or 40 cities, even double backing. And I can't remember doing anything at Touristy with you. I remember getting hot dogs in Chicago with you, but that's about the closest that I could think of. Like, and that was nothing.
I mean, like, meals don't really count.
Yeah.
I feel like,
yeah.
Like going somewhere for like some good food. That's not really quite the same. I'm not like, I never feel like I'm hanging out in a place for the most part, with some exceptions. Sometimes you like, book a spot and you can't fill like the next day or 2, and so you end up just like chilling in that spot. But like that's rare.
It is rare. If you're doing it right, it's rare.
For sure.
I mean, if you're doing a tour and you're fucking sitting in one city for 3 days not making money, you're fucking up. So that's just the reality of it, unless it's your own city and you have a couple of days off before you go back on the road, or, some shit like that. That happens sometimes. But like, again, like there's rules to this shit. You know, sometimes like when people don't make money on tour or don't break even on tour, at least there are distinct reasons for that. It's the work that you put in before you got on the road. And you know, people don't want to admit it, but like the combination of having to rehearse very hard to get your set down and the combination of having to plan really well to make sure that everything goes well is too much for a lot of people. Oftentimes it was not too much for me, but I was very rare in the fact that I enjoyed booking and I was addicted to performing. Not everybody could say that, and you do burn yourself out, as I to some degree did and have, you know. But so you would do it again, like if I said to you, I didn't even tell you this, man. Like I remember somehow I saw an old video. It was like 3 years ago, whatever the fuck. I might have said this to you. But I remember seeing a video of us performing somewhere. It was a video clip. It was like, 30 seconds or whatever. And I'm doing my thing. I'm right in the front. There's a crowd in the front. And you're in the back and you're doing the banana thing where you're just jumping up and down. And I got my hand in the air. People have their hand in the air. And I was like, man, I want to fucking tour with Banana again, man. Like, I want to be back on the tour. I want to be like, because like, after we stopped touring together, I started touring with this guy. I started touring with DJ SX back here, Like, but my point is, the energy that we had was so dope, man. Like, I just want to give you props while we're here talking, man. Like, it was a lot of fun to play with you, because like I was looking for a DJ to play with for a long time, and other people DJ'd for me. Not too many people toured with me as the DJ. It was always spot on. And like any other music art form, you need energy from all aspects of the stage. Oh yeah. And I will say this, I am not speaking of any DJ or DJs in particular, but I've watched many DJs that sort of studiously just stare at their mixer while you're rapping, and they just do this. And if anyone on the stage doesn't look 100% focused, the crowd is not going to give a shit about you, period.
Absolutely.
I don't care if that's a hype man or a guitar player or a DJ or a guy with the fucking tambourine. Motherfuckers better be amped to be on that stage. With a fucking smile on their face. Because if they're not, people that have nothing to fucking, that don't have a fucking pot to piss in but 2 Guinnesses and a fucking cold bed are not going to give you any fucking love. And that's what you find in most of these bars, man. Is like people that, are struggling, that are there for a good time. And that's what you're there to give them. And when we were rocking together, that's what we attempted to give people, to the degree that they showed up to do so.
Yeah, man. We had great fucking times. I loved those tours. I love touring with you.
Yeah, man.
I would do it. I'd do it again. Fuck it.
Word, man. Oh yeah. I would do it. I would do a tour with you again too, man. Because I think that we, it's funny is like we knew each other really well when we were touring, because we were doing Dope Shit podcasts for a lot of those tours. Uncommon Radio Live for a lot of those tours. So we had already been seeing each other once a week, and we had done Karma tours before we broke out and did tours, and we had known each other for years, and that was years ago. But we had known each other for years, so. Wow. But now if we toured, it would be even more like, know each other. There's that many more layers. So, anyway,
it'd be fun.
I guess that brings me to like, sort of like what I wanted to wrap on is like, after listening to the show, last week, I mean, again, I meant what I said, but I don't want it to come across like I don't want to perform. And maybe when I started that podcast, I didn't, but when you get that shit out of your system in a public way, to the degree that, people hear our show, you do recalculate, and it does give you a little bit of space in your belly to be like, okay, now that I got that out of my system,
Mm-hmm.
do I have the willpower to actually maybe do this? And I think I do.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to get that. Honestly, for me, it feels like it would be like a redemption story because I, had a really shitty last tour. And I've actually performed a bunch of times after that tour. And all of those shows were fine. Some of them were big. Like I opened for like a couple of big acts after that, actually, in one-offs. And those are always fun because you've got a live crowd in front of you. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they want to see the other guy, but at least they're there, So, opening is great. And, so I want to get back to that, man. I really do. The big thing for me now is it's like being out of shape, and I don't mean
Yeah.
like rap skills, because if anything, I'm probably better at that now than I ever was. It's about, the rehearsal grind, my process is to record a lot of music. And when you record a lot of music, this isn't like I'm going to take this one precious song and rehearse it to death and then one day I'll go in the studio and record it. It's like, boom, I've got fucking 8 verses written. Let's do this. And you've got like 4 songs done. And so my process is always in reverse. I honestly don't even think it is in reverse. I think what I do is probably the norm. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Who am I to say? But I write, and then when it's time to do a show, I start rehearsing and dedicating these songs to memory. And my memory is really shitty. So it's a little bit of an extra hurdle for me. And then I get the songs down. And usually what gets me to do that is deadlines, motivations, money, commitments, and when you're out of the game, you're out of the game, so like I have to start basically from scratch. First of all, I have a new album coming out and I would like to dedicate a lot of those songs to memory and get them rehearsed, which I'm actually now actively doing. I can say I've started doing that. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to get those songs pinned down and have a new album to perform, and only grab a couple of the older songs and bring them back, but like the ones that I want to do, so I'm excited, man. I'm excited because I'm kind of at a point in my life where I'm kind of doing this part of it for me. And if people call me and want to book me, then they book me. If not, then I know that I could do what I could do at a moment's notice, and that's sort of where I am.
I just miss it. I miss the experience. I really do. I mean, I generally don't have to deal with with the booking or any of those unpleasant things.
What if I bring you in as a co-booker? Then do you still want to tour with me again?
You're fucked.